Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group. It is the bi-weekly sync. It is July 2nd, 2020 in US side. This day is in US-based locations and offices. I know that this day is already starting to be slightly slower because tomorrow is a public holiday in US, but obviously not in the rest of the world. So, and why is it a public holiday in US tomorrow? Well, it's Independence Day on 4th of July, but because it's Saturday, then this Friday is off as well. So on today's agenda, we're going to have 15 minutes again, summary on SPFx, where we are, and then a run through of different PnP updates and open source projects. And so making sure that everybody's up to date what's happening in them, and then new community samples. I'm going to mention those as well. And then 15 past, quarter past, we'll hopefully move to Bo George. And then we have Sudharsan and then Hugo doing a demo. So basically we booked kind of a 15 minutes for the intro and slides, and then 15 for the demos. So really cool stuff coming today. If it might be that we'll adjust the timings on the demo side. Let's see how the timing actually goes, but we'll end on the hour. Now let's actually move into the slides. So quick recap, you have opportunities to contribute and participate on the PnP SPFx JavaScript Special Interest Group or in our community. You can always volunteer to do a live demo in this community calls. It's just a matter of reaching out to me or some of the other PnP initiative PnP team members. So basically then we'll schedule you a spot. So it can be related on SharePoint Framework, or it can be related on, for example, on the PnPjs. The key point here is that not a product demos, but technology demos and samples. It doesn't have to be open source. We've been having really cool demos which are not open source, but it's all about learning from others by seeing your stuff live on the community calls. You can contribute in GitHub. We have multiple different GitHub locations, GitHub repositories where you can actually start actively contributing. We'll go through some of them and those projects slightly later on the slides. But really reporting issues, submitting pull requests, and helping with the issues and pull requests as well. So that's more than welcome from your side. And the most important part, always give us feedback. Is the call content interesting? What else could we be actually providing? Documentation needs related on anything on Microsoft 365 platform where we can help you to be more successful. That's the information what we're interested in. And the last thing obviously is that positive feedback is always cool as well. So remember to, in general, in life, to always to provide positive feedback as well. It's not about always for the improvements or something is missing and calling them out. Now, quick recap on the assets. We have the Microsoft 365 developer videos channel. We have the Microsoft 365 SharePoint community video channels. We have the open source assets. We have sample galleries, and one URL, which is the easy location to get access on all of this stuff, is AKMS M365 PnP. If you're looking into SharePoint Framework documentation, that's in the AKMS SPFx, the easy access point on there. Follow us on what's happening at Microsoft 365 Dev or at M365 PnP. Now, one of the most successful actually initiatives which we are executing on the PnP is the PnP Sharing is Caring initiative. And this is really for you if you're not familiar enough on getting started on using GitHub, contributing on GitHub, contributing on documentation, contributing on samples, and that's where the PnP Sharing is Caring initiative will help you. So David Warner and Hugo Bernier are hosting these setups and hosting these training sessions where they will help you one by one of all of the attendees to be successful in GitHub. So it doesn't matter if you're actually planning to contribute in the M365 PnP assets or some other assets. These sessions are open for anybody in the community to join to understand how to get started on contributing. So really cool stuff, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback on these sessions, and like we can see from Oscar on the chat as well. So thank you for that one. The following sessions are first-time contributor sessions in 24th and 27th of July, and then community doc sessions in July 31st and August 3rd. AKMS Sharing is Caring is the location where you can get more information. Now, quick recap on SharePoint Framework, just to recap on where we are. Intentionally, we are not showing exact numbers, but this is basically the lifetime growth of SharePoint Framework. That weird drop earlier this year is related on a data glitch, which we had in our telemetry. Slightly awkward thing, our telemetry got throttled, so we lost some data. Probably heard about throttling in the cloud at some point, but we'll also fix that, and then we'll get the telemetry back in line. But we can basically see that SharePoint Framework daily usage and daily growth is growing quite significantly, even from the start of this year. And we kind of doubled within the last 365 days. We more than doubled the SharePoint Framework third-party day-to-day usage, and people are building more and more SharePoint Framework extensibility. Now, on the SharePoint Framework extensibility for Microsoft Teams, because you can build Microsoft Teams tabs and personal applications with SharePoint Framework, that's actually growing at 40% on month-to-month basis. So we grew the usage 40% from May to end of June on SharePoint Framework extensibility for Microsoft Teams. So really cool to see that site to be growing as much as it is as well. Now, quick recap on what's happening on SharePoint Framework. So 1.11 is coming out. It is expected to come out in July. We're still hoping that we can get it out in July. We are actually doing actively internal testing on it. There are some issues which we still need to fix on that before we can actually get it out for you, because we want to make sure that the package is in a best possible quality so that there's no problems with that. The key point here is that we, as part of the 1.11, we will also enable SharePoint Framework in the app source or in the Office source. So you can actually build SharePoint Framework based web parts, and you can put them in the app source, and people and customers can actually install them to their tenants from there. That will require 1.11 because we're adding some additional metadata attributes on the solution and making things more better. As more part of 1.11, we'll have also Teams integration improvements, especially for task modules, and then metadata updates for the manifest order generation. Now, there's a lot of other stuff happening on the SharePoint Framework, so not just about the client-side packages getting updated. So we are pushing out updates on the server side all the time, and there will be other announcements coming later this summer and autumn on the improvements in these areas. On the SharePoint Framework documentation side, there's a lot of actually updated documentation available. AKMS SPFx is the easiest way to get there, or AKMS SP Dev Docs, and that will run you to the right location. So we actually have now refreshed the SharePoint Framework overview, the web parts, extensions, library components, migrating existing customizations, and there will be further updates on the horizon as well. So we're trying to do a full reset on the 1.10 level because 1.10 is the latest version out, but then as part of the 1.11 version, we'll also release new documentation related on store and all of that stuff, which, by the way, partly is already in the docs, but they're not in the table of contents. So if you're super interested, you can actually go already and have a sneak peek on what's happening from the GitHub, from the SP Dev Docs side. Now, if you see something, if you see problems in the docs, if you need something, please let us know. We want to help you to be successful with SharePoint Framework in SharePoint or in the Microsoft Teams. So please let us know on the feedback on that. On the PnPjs client side, library side, quick update on that one. 2.07 is scheduled to happen in July 10th, so in next week. And also nothing too much has been changed here. So additional versions, additional improvements are coming. Also, Patrick is still on a family leave, but he is coming back actually on Monday. So it's great to have Patrick Rogers back on the office. Well, in quotes, in the office, because everybody's working remotely, but back in business as well. He was on parental leave for quite a few weeks, actually. So you can see more announcements on this side when he's back. Now, Office 365 CLI, really great, interesting announcements and movement in here as well. So obviously, we already talked about publicly on the fact that we'll rename Office 365 CLI as a Microsoft 365 CLI, so it's aligned on the new naming. And what's really cool as part of the 2.11 release is that this Office 365 CLI is now natively in the Azure Cloud Shell. So if you start up your Azure Cloud Shell, you can actually start using the Office 365 commands directly from that shell. So it's automatically loaded inside of the Cloud Shell. So really cool stuff. On this side, a lot of additional commands, a lot of actions happening here, additional improvements. Also, the updates on the SharePoint Framework project upgrade commands are happening. Today, by the way, Hugo will actually show you a live demo on how that upgrade command actually works together with Visual Studio Code guidelines. What says it? Code flows. No, I'm using code. I'm using a wrong term. CodeTours. Thank you, Hugo. Thank you. Cool. I've written that in agenda, but I'd lost the word. But that's quite typical for me. SPFx reusable components. Quick recap on here. Not much have changed from the past week. So from the past 2 weeks. So pretty recently we released a new version 1.19 for both React controls and the React property controls. And these are basically controls which will increase your productivity as developers. So making sure that you don't have to worry about where the data is coming, how do you get to the data, how do you implement list picker or a file picker. It's all reusable controls for you. Behind the scenes, they're using obviously Office UI Fabric controls and accessing then the REST APIs or Graph APIs as needed. So really cool stuff for you to take advantage. On the PnP SPFx Community Yeoman Generator, there was a new version this week, actually 1.14.1, which is the latest, and there is a additional Angular 9 support. I think it was actually in 1.14 when Angular 9 support was added. So the PnP SPFx Generator extends the out-of-the-box SharePoint Framework Yeoman Generator and adds, for example, Angular 9 support for you to take advantage. And as part of the Yeoman generator for PnP SPFx Generator, it asks additional questions like, do you want to use PnPjs? And if you do, it associates all of those packages and components directly in your solution without you have to worry about what's happening behind the scenes. So again, increases your productivity as the developer. And in here in the PnP Modern Search, just to quick recap on that one as well. So that's moving ahead. The latest version is from 3.14.1, which is a June 2020 version, and mainly bug fixes, polishing. But basically, the whole point of the PnP Modern Search, just to recap on that one, it is a set of web parts which will enable you to build a modern SharePoint search experience, because we don't have an out-of-the-box native web part to actually make that happen. And this one has its own GitHub repository. It is an open source. There's a V4 is now available also for preview, so you can actually start testing and seeing what in the V4 will be out. So there will be a new architectural designs for that, new functionalities, new capabilities related on the search web part. So really, really cool stuff from this side as well. And then quick recap on the PnP SPFx samples. Hugo, I think you're ready to go.
I am, thank you. So we have a lot of updated samples over the last 2 weeks. The first one was an update to the announcements application customizer. It was originally built by Martin Cyr, and Mike Myers added the ability to handle a blank start date and end dates. And then on the web part side, we have, we probably needed a whole page just for Abhishek's updates, but Abhishek updated the React accordion, the script editor, and the RSS reader with some great fixes. We also have Nandeep Nachan, who updated the image gallery web part built with adaptive cards. And then Andrew, I know Andrew probably wouldn't want to be listed in this list, but he did contribute. He updated the jQuery data tables tutorial as well as the jQuery full calendar tutorial. Vivek Chand updated the React image gallery. And finally, Peter Hemrick, and I'm sorry, Peter, if I'm mispronouncing your name, created a great version of Minesweeper in SPFx using the Fluent UI. If you have any ideas for new samples, or if you see cool samples out there that you think should be listed in the SPFx web parts or SPFx extension sample gallery, please go to our repository and create a sample request issue, and we'll look into that. That's it for me, Vesa.
Thank you, Hugo. Really cool stuff, and it's great to have more and more of these samples, because they're great starting points for anything what we build and in the day-to-day work as the project. So really, really, really cool stuff. I know that the RSS reader, as an example, was clearly noted also internally. So people were like, "Oh, that's really, really cool" inside of Microsoft. So really, really cool stuff from here. Now, let's move into the demo section. And first, we have Boo George from ThreeWill, and then Sudharsan and next, and then we go to Hugo. So, Boo, are we ready to go?
I am, and I hope you don't want me to sing any Culture Club songs. So,
Your choice.
We'll lose everybody really fast. So. All right. Well, hopefully you see my slide. It's just the stuff about me, principal consultant at ThreeWill, and all my contact stuff. ThreeWill's a gold partner in the Southeast. We do collaborative solutions, migrations, all that kind of stuff. I did thinking about something you said earlier, Vesa. So the web part I demoed before a couple months ago, Q&A web part, have customer approval to get it open source. So now the only constraint is Bo and his time from his day job to get that out there. So maybe in the next few weeks, months, I'll have that open sourced as part of the samples as well. So just wanted to call attention to that one. So today, what am I here for? I'm going to talk about another web part I did, React Pages hierarchy solution, and that's the link to where it is in GitHub. So it's already open sourced and available for people to download. Immediately got a lot of good feedback from everybody in it. So why did I build that thing? A lot of customers I was talking to, now in modern SharePoint, we can create so many pages so quickly and easily that we kind of have page sprawl sometimes in sites. And there's always a desire to say, well, I want to link these things together to sort of navigate within my particular site collection. And, I want to know where I am in this site. So, before writing code, I was like, well, I could use the rich text editor and put hyperlinks in there. I could use a quick links web part and link to pages, but those were a little bit brittle. I could get a little smarter and use highlight content to filter child pages based on some attribute, and that would work okay. But then I didn't have like a where am I breadcrumb up kind of thing. So, I was thinking about that. And obviously we have mega navigation that part of its intent is maybe to show a hierarchy sometimes, but it's kind of limited to 3 levels. And some of the customers I was talking to were, 7 levels of hierarchy. And I was like, really? So, with that, I like writing code. I just made an excuse to create this thing. So I'm just going to switch over to showing it because that's actually what's fun. And before I show the code, let me show you what it does. So I've got this spaceship Earth site I just did because I'm kind of a geography dork, and I thought that's a great way to show a hierarchy. So I've got Earth, and then I've got the continents going across the top, and just this big old image that I found somewhere. And so if I went into North America, from the home page, the hierarchy really starts to show. So I've come from home and I'm on North America. And then, hey, what are the countries that are in North America? So Canada and United States and so on. So you can kind of, you've got your where am I and how do I get back up from here? And then what's beneath me in this hierarchy? So I could go to the United States, kind of drill in there, and you see that I've got all the 50 states. Each one of these is an ASPX page that's being filtered by my web part. And so I think the one I actually put stuff in is because I live in Georgia. So, you could drill into Georgia, and again, your breadcrumb trail builds out, and, I've got my cities in Georgia, and I think I live in Columbus. There's probably nothing below this one except for how to get back up from there. So, no children found and stuff like that. So that's, if I go back up to Georgia, you can kind of see the relationship. So what's in the web part that makes it do that really? Really, when you put the web part on the page, there's just one decision to make. What am I rendering? Am I rendering the ancestor pages, who's myself and above me in this hierarchy, or am I rendering children pages? So this one, if I switch to it, it's rendering children pages. So, who has chosen me as a parent? And those two relationships drive everything in this web part. And, not much else to do it. So it should make it simple for an end user to edit. The other thing that I did is thinking about responsive. We always think about responsive in terms of a device width, but in SharePoint, you actually have to think about what column it is it in. So if this web part was in well, let me click the right place. So I click here. Let's try it one more time. If I make this, a 2 column or a 3 column, I'm still in the wrong zone. Let's try this one more time. There we go. So there it responded. So if I switch to a 3, you see things will stack. So this thing will respond not only to the page width, but the particular column you're in and start doing wrapping and stuff like that. So, I definitely, that was kind of something new to me to respond to, the bounding rectangle and not just the page. So there's that. And then just to show you in SharePoint a little bit more behind the scenes. So what controls those relationships? When you add this web part to the first page, so in my Q&A solution, I use the old Elements XML style, but this one, I actually wait till you add it to the page. And when you add it to the page, it'll create this column behind the scenes. And so in that case, in this column, I'll actually do a group by because I think that's a good way to show it. So you can kind of see the relationships that people manage. So all they have to do in the page properties of the web part is, say if I'm editing this Albany page, I would pick my parent as Georgia, and that would establish the relationships. and I would follow Georgia's parent all the way up and stuff like that. So, you know, looking at the home down, you see that North America has picked home as its parent. And then in North America, all these pages have picked it as their parent in Canada and stuff. And so relationship management is pretty easy in that thing to keep track of stuff. So that was the simple part of it. Not a lot of list changes and not a ton of UI stuff. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys. So when I was developing this, I used a pattern, and I'll show the code for this. This might be one of the more interesting things. Is, you know, this is running on localhost. And I'm going to put 2 copies of this web part on there just to show you kind of what I do. So if I click configure, this debug page ID will only show when you're in debug mode, localhost, or running the workbench off of the page in SharePoint. And so I'm going to put the parent's ID at 1 just because I think I have something there for that. And I'm going to pick ancestor pages. So we see Earth, and then I'm going to put this one at 1 as well and pick children. So we kind of, you know, this is debugging in the workbench, and I even went so far as to utilize a query string just for my testing, so I could test this, you know, I'll call it headless without SharePoint. So as I click through this, I'm passing the debug page ID that I only use in debug mode as well, and I could sort of test this thing, you know, without SharePoint at all. And I use that using mock data and a custom fetch client and stuff like that, that I can mock all this data to make it look like SharePoint, still go through the Fluent API as part of PnP, but return data locally. So, you know, this is kind of it running on localhost as well, just to show you that it works. And so with that, I'll kind of switch over to the code to show you what's kind of interesting there. So I've got my tabs across the top that I think are most interesting to show you in this. The first one, this use page API. So I've done React without, for state and props without a framework. I've done it with Redux. And Mike Hummel, who works at ThreeWill, did a really good write-up on using React hooks and functional components. And I really took to his pattern. So this use page API is using React hooks, and it's got some of the flavors of Redux in here. So I've got my actions and my action types and my reducers for updating state based on the particular action. And then I've got my use page API that everybody calls, as well as my collection of ancestor and child pages. Anybody that's done hooks knows how use effect runs. I've got some stuff in here so that it only runs when certain things change. And then, of course, I've got, you know, my actual API calls. So this is where I call the site pages list, and I get my lookups for the parent page, and I build out everything and all that kind of stuff, and populate my ancestor and children, and then dispatch my actions. And so, yeah, I've got stuff for checking if a page exists and dispatching that one, determining if the user can manage the site pages. So that tells me whether or not I can actually create that column in the list for the user when they add the web part to the page, because somebody could edit a page but maybe not necessarily be able to manage schema and stuff like that. So I deal with that kind of stuff. And so this guy is a lot like what I've done in Redux in the past for my services and making those available. Kind of going to the right, the container, it's you know, one of the things I used to love in Angular is routing and redrawing components and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't routing based on URL changes, but it's routing based on web part config changes. So, you know, if I've chosen to show ancestors, then I'm going to render my breadcrumb control. If I've chosen to show children, I'm going to show a list layout control. Otherwise, show the thing that says, hey, you need to finish doing some work, you know, configuration. So I've got this thing in here. And part of the reason I did this pattern is because I wanted this to be quasi-pluggable. Where other different layout mechanisms could be used, maybe buttons and sort of the caret-based breadcrumbs are not enough. And so we could have other web part config options and layout options and choose different controls to render. That's really all this guy is good for. And of course, getting all my page state. So looking at one of those, actually the list layout, you know, not anything special in here. The main thing to call out is that I do the get bounding rectangle to tell me how big I need to render. Am I in a, you know, a wide or a 3 column or what, and all that stuff. And then the rest of this is just rendering the HTML. Really, that's all there is. I did use the React resize detector that helps me know to redraw when people do that stuff. The breadcrumb layout, which I hadn't brought over, pretty much the same thing. It looks very similar to the other one, except for it's got a little more logic around when to show chevron down and chevron right based on the width of the zone you're in and all that kind of stuff. So just UI rendering stuff. But I'm going through that stuff really quick because I only have 5 more minutes, and I want to show you a pattern that I've had for a long time that I started with Angular that I use for the local host. So I use the custom fetch client that you basically configure. So I have a base web part in here, and I configure the fetch client factory to my custom fetch client. And then in that fetch client, all its job is to figure out if I'm using SharePoint proper or not. And if I am not, then I'm going to mock response data for the PnP Fluent API to use. So I have a mock list factory, and I handle the fetch, and I manipulate data, right? So my mock list factory here, the only thing that's important about this to kind of point out is this base list collection right here is where I mock up all of the SharePoint lists and libraries that I want to fake out with arrays. And so, I've had projects where I had 10 or 15 related lists with lookups and all that sort of stuff. And so this would be bigger. The rest of this code is pretty boilerplate. It doesn't change. It's managing that list data. And in particular, it's using local storage so that I could actually do updates to list items, and it saves. And then I could use the updated list items. So that's what mock list factory is for. The other, probably this is where my labor of love over time has been. So this is where I handle all of those calls and figure out how to cruft it up and make it look like what the API, the PnP API would return to me. So most of these are not used by this particular web part because I'm just really working with list items. But getting a user, site users, getting the current web, attached files, relative things, items, context info, doing batch calls where you wrap multiple calls in a batch, all that stuff. I've a long time ago coded stuff to deal with that. And so this is where all the workhorse is. And then as a consumer, what I do is copy this from project to project. And then all I really have to do is create an array of items. So this page list is what represents my SharePoint pages. So if you guys kind of remember that local host one, everything is a self-referencing lookup. So I have a lookup field, and then I have an ID, a title of the thing. And in this case, I'm using for my debug, my file references that debug page ID. So that's how I was able to drill through those things. And then my parent page ID. So these are my lookups. And so this stuff all gets returned through the mock response and the custom fetch client and all that stuff. And so when I use this page API and I make one of these calls like this in here, or really more importantly, this call, my mock data returns it back through here so that the items collection I get here looks exactly like it would in native SharePoint. And that's how I can develop and test without SharePoint at all. So it's been really helpful to me. Building that out and being able to test without SharePoint and just fire something up and run it on localhost. Workbench is great, and I love how easy it is to run that now with just gulp serve and hanging off a URL, but sometimes you just want to run on localhost too. So I just wanted to show that, and I think the only thing else I have to show is my last slide. Just shout outs to everybody, especially Mike Hummel's Heroes, SPF React Hooks is where I stole all that stuff for use page API, and then all the community stuff. So that's my time. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that, and certainly can answer questions if there are some, if we have time.
Excellent. Thanks, Bo. Really, really, really cool stuff, and a great sample, and the way you're handling behind of the scenes, the mocking and everything. This is really, really great and highly useful for everybody to take advantage. So really great.
Yeah, at some point I'd like to turn that into a PnP package or some, a node package or something npm, but It's just not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, we need to prioritize our time. We absolutely understand that. So, but really, really cool. Really great clarification as well, how it's actually being implemented. And the whole functionality is also really cool. So awesome stuff.
Cool, thanks.
Now let's actually move into Sudhar's screen. Sudhar has building an application customizer to inform end users on alerts within the date period. So we're jumping to Sudhar. Yes, we can see your screen.
So hi everyone. My name is Sudharsan Kesavanarayanan, and I've been working as a SharePoint consultant at NTT based in Singapore. So these are all my social links and my blog site spknowledge.com. So today we are going to see a very simple application extension called Alert Message using jQuery plugin. So the main use case scenario is my client wants to display a message, a kind of a flash message, some important announcement to the end users. So based on the department, and it should have an expired, so something like that. So, but they have to manage the message easily using the SharePoint list. So this is the business case. So some of the features like the messages are maintained in a SharePoint list, which makes it end users easily manage the messages. And there are two dates, start date and expiry date, where they can draft the message when it should start displaying to the end users, and then they can also set the expiry date. And there is an isActive flag where if they want to soft delete it or if they want to remove the message immediately, they actually no need to delete the item. They can just change the flag. And then there is a property called animation type, which is a property for this extension where they can change the animation. So some of the artifacts used in this are, I have used a jQuery plugin called morphxt and then animate.cs. So this animate.cs is used for animation, where you can select various animations like bouncing from right, left. Those are all some sample animation effect. And I have used PnP SP. And there is one component, alert component, which I have developed using React functional components with hooks. So let us get back to the demo. So here you can see the extension. So once you refresh it, once you deployed it, so it is an application extension, so it will automatically start displaying the messages. So since this is an extension, there has to be a list which you need to create, which has columns like start date, expiry date, isActive, and the sequence. So the sequence, the messages will be displayed based on the sequence, and you can also set the start date and end date. So whenever you refresh the page, so I have used the predefined placeholders of size 35 to 50 pixel, so that it will previously allocate the size and then it will start displaying the message. So it is very simple and easy to maintain, and it is very simple extension. There is no great functionality, complex functionality implemented in this. So let us go through the code. So the first is the application customizer.ts, where I have defined animation type property. You can change the animation type. And this is where I am rendering the placeholders. So this render placeholders, and I am just passing the property to the component called alert.ts, alert component. So this is the alert component. And one thing I need to mention it here, because I have seen in some forums and in some of the issues that they are not rendering the placeholders. So this line is very much important for the extension, that we need to implement this line, because this line will check whether the placeholders are already there in the page or not. Then it will render our custom component. So this is a very important line. So we have to include this. And I have set it up the SP context. And let us move to the alert component. So this is a normal React functional component. So here I have used selective imports for webs and list items. And this is a start alert animation component where I am just using the jQuery plugin called morph extension, and then I am setting up the properties. So by default, it will be bounce and right. And if there is any animation property declared, so it will take the animation property, and the separator will be tilde symbol, and the speed is 5000. So this sample, I have defined only the animation type property. Maybe you can enhance the sample by giving it the duration, and also you can implement the separator properties and other properties which you can define based on the morph extension. And load alerts, it's pretty simple. I have just defined the query. So based on the camel query, based on the isActive flag, start date and expiry date, and then I'm just fetching the title. And I'm using PnPjs to get items using the camel query. And then I'm just joining the alerts and setting up in the state. So once it is set up in the state, then it got displayed. So based on the alert start animation, it will trigger it and then it will display it. And the last is elements.xml. Here I have deployed this package to the site collection. It is not a tenant level activation, so I have used this elements.xml. So this is the test property. I haven't changed anything on this. The main thing is the host properties. I have defined the pre-allocated application top height, which is 35 pixel. So this is a very major feature where there won't be any flick around your page if you have implemented this pre-allocation height. So hopefully I have covered everything. That's it, Vesa.
Excellent. Yeah, that's actually a really good point on the pre-allocated application customizer height, because then just can you go back on the implementation? We can explain what it means for those who are not on the UI. So if you do not define that booking, so to say, beforehand, you can actually see when it's loading, there's a white bar on the location where the red line is coming. Can you do it one more time, Sudhar? There we go, white bar, and there's the red line. The white bar is basically there because we have that pre-allocation in the user custom action defined as part of the implementation. So whenever the solution is loaded, on server side, we basically allocate then a 35 pixel, so that whenever the actual implementation is rendered on client side in a browser, because it's JavaScript, it doesn't actually move the page down, because I know that everybody is every now and then super annoyed on different applications and websites where the page is loading gradually and an async, and then it moves and transitions, and even actually SharePoint does it every now and then, and it's super annoying. So the pre-allocation is basically for handling that section. But super powerful, and obviously, like Sudharsan said, you can absolutely evolve this sample. You could actually modify the implementation, you can modify the background color, you can modify, let's say, a support in HTML inside of the rendering. So you could say that, hey, by the way, a super important message, read here more from here, and then you click that one, you land on an article page where you can read additional details. So really, really cool kind of a solution shim. A starting point which people can use in their implementations. So really cool stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sudharsan, on that one. I think that's it for this one then. That leaves Hugo some extra time for you, which is cool. And then if we have time in the end, we can do Q&A. Please use also the chat during the call if there's any questions for which you would like to address. Because we do have so many people in the call, we can't really, during the sessions and during the demos, jump on the questions. That's too hard. But Hugo, take it away.
Thank you. This is kind of a lot of pressure for me after 2 awesome demos to be presenting about upgrading your SharePoint Framework projects using Office 365 CLI CodeTour upgrades. My name is Hugo Bernier. I'm an MVP. I'm also a proud member of the Patterns and Practices virtual team. I can be reached on my blog and on Twitter, and don't be shy to reach out to me. Let's talk about what is Office 365 CLI. Well, if you don't know what Office 365 CLI is, I'm really offended, and I'm not talking to you ever again. It's really CLI is the command line interface that allows you to manage your Office 365 tenant and your SharePoint Framework projects on any platform. Unlike some other command line tools or PowerShell-y kind of things where it was not so available in the past. To install it, you just need to use npm, and you deploy it with the G tag or the G flag to make it global. So it's at PnP Office 365 CLI. And to use it, really all you need to do is to type Office 365 in your command or terminal or anything you use to type your commands. At the bottom, I've included some URLs. One of them is to have access to kind of all the documentation, and the other one I think is just to access the code if you want to contribute, because this is an open source initiative that everyone can contribute to. And what we'll be showing today is actually something that I had the opportunity to contribute to. So one of the commands that are available in Office 365 CLI is the SPFx project upgrade. And what it allows you to do, and this is probably very timely given the fact that SPFx 1.11 is coming soon, is the ability for you to take your SPFx project from pretty much any version 1.0 and above, and to convert it to any specified version. Now, the one thing that we have to be clear is this command does not change your project. What it does is it gives you the instructions or the steps to upgrade your project. But all you need to do is you type, after you've typed Office 365 and you get this pretty new command prompt, you just type SPFx project upgrade, and then you put the options. And the options are listed here on the screen, but I'll show you a little bit further later. And then the types of upgrades that you can do are text, JSON, Markdown, and Tour. Now, the reason why we didn't want to change your project is because depending on the complexity of your project, you might have a lot of NPM packages that are included in your project that may or may not be compatible with the newer versions of the SPFx upgrades. And this is something that you have to do yourself. You have to validate every component that you got in your project to make sure that it upgrades successfully. But what the report or the steps give you is really kind of the full detailed list of what you have to do. The problem is, if you're working on a big project, like the project I'll be showing you had a lot of steps for me to upgrade, it becomes really hard to keep track of, okay, well, was I on step 11 or step 111? I can't remember. And this is where the CodeTour upgrade comes in. Now, what is CodeTour? Well, CodeTour is actually a Visual Studio Code extension. The URL is at the bottom here, aka.ms/CodeTour. And it was not written, or it was not intended to be used for the Office 365 CLI. It's just, we saw a great opportunity here. CodeTours are something that allows you to record and play back a guided walkthrough of your code in your project. And you can have as many CodeTours as you want in your projects. In fact, we've started to add CodeTours in a lot of the PnP samples. The SPFx Starter Kit now has a CodeTour that walks you through the architecture of the solution, and we're planning on adding more and more. So it's a great way to guide people through where they should pay attention. And what it does is it creates a tours folder, .tours, and that's what our solution does. So now, because my upgrade process actually requires doing npm install, I actually pre-recorded this because I didn't know how much time I would have to do this demo. So this is one of the samples that I've created. It seems like 20 years ago, but it's actually probably last year, which contains probably a dozen web parts in it. And so it's a big project to upgrade, and it's a project that's available in the samples repository. So all I did is I opened the Visual Studio Code or the project folder, and I opened my command line there, and then I just typed Office 365 and hit enter. And what I get is I get this command prompt, and that's the command prompt that's provided to me by Office 365 CLI. And then I just type SPFx project upgrade, and then I always do help because I never remember what the instructions are. And then what you'll see here is, I'll even remember right here, the output, this here. So the command is output, and the output types are JSON, text, Markdown, or Tour, and the default is text. So once you've done that, so let's actually just, again, I'm in the current project folder, so I don't really need to do anything fancy here. I just need to just type output and then Tour. And that's it. That's my demo. Thank Thank you, everyone. No, just kidding. Really, the CodeTour has been created. The upgrade has been created. And this was not sped up. This is actually real time. This is how long it took to do this. So then what you do is you open your Visual Studio Code project, and you'll notice at the top here, there is a new folder called Tours right here. I know it's green on green and it's hard to see, but it adds this to your project. Now, if you don't have CodeTours installed as an extension, it doesn't do anything, right? It's just a folder with some JSON files in it, and you can absolutely ignore it. But if you have CodeTours installed, automatically it shows you this window here that lets you start the CodeTour. So if you click on play, and let's do that. If you click on play, what it should do is it should launch a CodeTour for you. And it shows you here, and this is, I have to admit, this is a big project. It's got 146 steps, but it gives you the steps here. And you see it says execute the following command. And all you need to do is click on that blue button or that blue text. It will automatically start the command for you. Now we could just sit here and wait until npm install has been completed, but I recorded the video to make it faster. So once it's done, you actually click on right here. You just click on next, and it takes you to step 2. And as we go through the whole process, we actually walk you through every file so you know exactly what's being changed in your project. So you can see here, low-dash subset is showing version 171, but at the end of this step, it'll show me that it's on version 110. So you keep on doing this until you get to, and I've skipped a lot of steps here. I'm already at step 10. But then you'll have some other steps where, if we go to the next step, you'll see this one, it can't be updated for you with a command. So it says, this is what you need to do. You need to copy the version number from 171 to 110. So this is where you exercise your copy and paste skills. And you just do that. Now, when you do this, you have to keep in mind that you still want the JSON to be properly formatted when you're entering the information. So there's a few steps in there where we ask you to add new nodes and things like that. Just remember, sometimes you need to add some, commas or things like that. So you go through all the steps. It's usually not 146 steps. It's usually about 20 or so steps. But you go through all the steps, and then eventually when you get to the end, it'll tell you this is an optional step if you have any problems. Because sometimes some people will get problems with SP HTTP client configuration. It tells you you can just run npm dedupe. Otherwise, it says that's it. You're done. There is one additional thing that you can do is if you really don't want people to have to see this tour when they open the project, you can delete the tour folder. But I strongly recommend you delete the tour and then go nuts and create your own tour so you can introduce people to the content and the structure of your code. So that's it. At this point, once you've done this, you can just run your npm build, and you have, if everything went well, you actually have a fully upgraded SPFx project. Now, there is one little thing that I should point out, is the CodeTour extension was updated yesterday. And of course, it happened just the day before I was doing a demo. And what could happen is, depending on the version, the CodeTour schema might require your file to be, instead of having // like this, it might have to be just the relative path from the root of the project. So if you open the CodeTour, and depending on the version of the CodeTour that you have installed, if the CodeTour doesn't start, that's more than likely what it is. So you'd have something like this. You just go and remove this. I just did a global search and replace, and the CodeTour will be happy. That's pretty much it. I'm available for questions. Vesa?
There was a question from Neela Mugan. Can we use CodeTour with the summary upgrade because it will be shorter? Summary upgrade. Not following on the question, at least on this one.
I'm not sure what the summary upgrade is.
But anyway, so when you are executing the Office 365 CLI, it will give you the steps, and this is a great add-on. Actually, pinpoint you to the actual locations, actual places where your changes needs to be done. And obviously, we from the SharePoint Framework Engineering are working directly with the Office 365 CLI team, so that whenever the 1.11 comes out, there will be immediately available upgrade steps from the 1.10 to 1.11 as needed. So that's being already tested actually as I speak for the 1.11. So that work is already ongoing. So really cool. And then Hugo, you pointed out, but that's actually a good point as well. Anybody could use the CodeTours in general for approach, let's say creating an intro for the project, right?
Yes, and in fact, Bo Cameron, David Warner, and I started creating CodeTours for the SP Starter Kit because it's probably one of the largest solutions out there that's made of a whole bunch of components. So we started with just an overview of the SP Starter Kit, and then we're actually going in and creating CodeTours for each of the web parts. So to lower the adoption barrier and make it easy for people to understand the project structure. Yeah. And every new SPFx web part sample that I'm creating, I'm actually adding CodeTours in them as well, just to kind of give the same tour that I would give if I was demoing this on a community call. I'm doing the same CodeTour in the repos, and I encourage you to do the same if you want to share code with other people.
Absolutely.
And I agree with Ralph. CodeTour should be part of the review process. In fact, you may have noticed when you have a CodeTour running that it gives you the ability to reply because it's really intended as a quick way to review code. This is not a session about CodeTour, but CodeTour actually does allow you to bind your CodeTour to a specific version of a commit in GitHub, so that when you upgrade or you go back in history, you're actually able to see the CodeTour for that specific version.
Yep, really cool stuff. Absolutely, and good point from Ralph related on this being a great tool for the remote work and for the teamwork as well. Good. We do not have too much time, so I'm actually going to go and let's go to the Q&A page, and I'll also continue having a discussion in the chat. I'm just going to share my slides from my screen, so freeing Hugo's screen from there. So let's jump there. Now, just to recap. So thank you, Bo. Thank you, Sudharsan. Thank you, Hugo. Really great demos, clean demos this time again. So we'll get the recording out in 24 hours in the Microsoft 365 SharePoint Community YouTube channel at the MSM 365 PnP videos. Please follow us in Microsoft 365 Dev or M365 PnP. Those are the two channels and accounts which we're using. The next SharePoint Framework call is on July 16th. We will not have a summer break this time. So if you followed up on the PnP work in the past, we've been always typically having a few weeks summer break. This time we'll just keep on going. So all of our meetings are recurrent meetings until the end of the world. So they don't have an end date. That's what I mean with that. End of the world is not a term we should be using openly. Anyway, the next call is in July 16th at 7 a.m. And then next Microsoft 365 General Dev call is on July 9th. So a week from now, we'll talk about team stuff and other stuff and SharePoint stuff on that one as well. July monthly community call is on July 14th, where we talk about barriers, Microsoft 365 barriers and governance, and there's really cool demos coming up on that one as well. In general, we have quite a lot of community calls, so feel free to pop in and check all of those ones which are interested for you and stay away from those which are not. Everything is recorded, everything is in a YouTube, and typically for the individual demos like this one, we'll then after a few weeks or a week after the full recording, we'll ship also individual demos as videos so you can easily find them from YouTube. So please join on those which you find interesting. We do have a few minutes Q&A time, not a massive amount of time. If there's any last minute questions or topics which we want to actually discuss. The key point what I want to actually reiterate is that please, if you're looking into want to do your own demos, or you contributed a sample, or maybe you have your own sample in your own GitHub, so reach out. We can help you, first of all, get maybe a sample in the one centralized gallery, because we want everybody to get more visibility for the work what they've done. And the easiest way to do that is surfacing your sample in the centralized gallery. The second thing is that we would love you to actually do a live demo in this community calls, because these are so valuable, learning from others, learning new tools, learning new functionalities. If you run into an awesome Visual Studio Code extension, which is useful for SPFx, please share that. And let's talk about the extensions, let's talk about the learnings. All of that is super, super useful in this course as well. Where is this gallery again from Ali? HTTP AKMS SPFx web parts, AKMS SPFx extensions. So I will actually jump into the slide on that one because we have a few minutes time. So basically, here we can see AKMS SPFx extension, AKMS SPFx web part, and those are really the easiest way to find SPFx web parts or SPFx extensions. Now, we're looking into potentially having a more, let's say, polished one centralized location for all of the samples in Microsoft 365 sooner or later. The one which we have in the docs.microsoft.com/samples is slightly not as flexible as we want for our usage. So it might be that we'll bring a new UX for this one later this autumn. No, it's not autumn now, later in autumn. So after the summertime in the Northern Hemisphere has gone. But I think, yeah, some teasing on the future stuff as well. A lot of plans to improve stuff, absolutely. But I think that's it for now. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Hugo, Sudharsan, and Boo for the great demos as well. And let's definitely stay in touch. If you're based in US, enjoy the extra holiday which you have tomorrow, and then get back to work on Monday. Well, enjoy the long weekend and get back to work whenever that is needed or possible. But thank you everybody. Thank you for the demos. Let's definitely stay in touch. Bye-bye.